You cannot recognize a great anime in one episode, a great manga in one chapter, nor a terrible one at that. Why? I'll be blunt and quick and apply some dialectics. There is no good or bad art. Things can only be better or worse than what you've seen before. A distinction without a difference, perhaps? But then why do we perceive children's standards as being so much lower than our own, generally speaking? How did there come to be a distinction between high and low art? Simple, only the rich got to experience high art, and in the case of a child, they have less to judge a story with. Greatness lies where men believes it resides. It's a trick of the light, and very tricky lights can create some very special effects. People who can cause these effects, who can channel or control the masses' perception, are called experts. Experts are simply people who have seen so many ordinary things that the extraordinary stands out. Why do I bring this all up? Well, I would consider myself an expert on shonen. I like ordinary shonen as a baseline. It doesn't need to be special to get my attention, so I feel I'm uniquely qualified to say this. Act Age is something special. Every big shonen manga, game, or anime has its own unique special something that puts it over the top. Miniseries encapsulate this essence in a thesis statement, as it were, for a narration on the nature of an occupation for which the shonen aesthetic will be an express part. Given that Act Age has one of the more impressive of these occupations, there's no better place for me to start examining its greatness. So without further ado, Act Age Take 1. Action. The first chapter of Act Age perfectly captures the role of director, audience, and fans in an actor's career. That doesn't sound like much until you consider actors are this series' versions of hunters, heroes, or Death Reapers. If a shonen series fails to establish the most important aspects of its world's occupation, you end up with a series like Fairy Tail, which completely contradicts the aesthetic it is imitating. But how does one know if a series is effective in establishing the rules of the trade and thus providing a path for its themes and plot to flourish? One of the most important things an author must consider in these opening narrations is if the audience expectations of the occupation are a help to the series, or if they'll have to be reframed. Ninjas are almost universally considered to be cool, so there's little need for doubling down on that point in Naruto. Instead, it focuses on the more unique aspects of these specific in-universe ninjas. In contrast, Act Age has a completely different but equally interesting methodology. It uses the tools of the occupation it's covering to reframe your expectations. Whether you're interested in the premise, skeptical, or indifferent, with the very first line, the manga gets you in its pace, until the director calls cut. The reason directors use the word cut is it disturbs your current mood of thinking. Just like an object being severed, everyone knows that the scene has stopped filming, and it also signals to the editor that they can cut it as well. The physicality of the word is like an attack without necessarily being threatened. You become disconnected from your past self before you start the chapter, and now you're ready to be mentally anchored to the first piece of information the manga gives you. So as long as the next line is great, you have yourself the perfect intro. Just for that short span of time, we live the life of others. This is a great line for multiple reasons. Firstly, it plays up the ideal of actors that we have in our heads, as people who really get to live fantastical lives. Secondly, it establishes what I imagine will be the biggest theme going forward, the preciousness of time. Already in our own lives, a good number of people have plenty of things they may want to experience, but may not have the time to experience them all. For an actor, this type of anxiety is likely exasperated tenfold. So what we have here is stakes and a sense of adventure, characteristics of any great shonen manga, and as the cherry on top, we also have the acknowledgement of acting as a bizarre form of pleasure, which will become extremely relevant later. If actors are this story's ninjas or hunters, then of course, we must remember that those characters are still considered wild and crazy to an extent in their worlds. Act Age carries with it a meta-understanding that for actors in our world the situation is much the same. The act of borrowing familiar tropes and modifying them to become something incredibly familiar, yet fresh and exciting, is what it means to have a good introduction as a jump manga. And we're only getting past the first page. Enter main character, Unagi Kei. The first thing you establish about your main character is the most important. For Deku from My Hero Academia, the first page he's introduced in establishes that he is brave, morally upright, and not the strongest. The story then gets to focus on something that will make you very happy. Now that you're attracted to this upright kid, it'll give him the strength to stand up for those ideals without hurting himself. Contrast this with some series, and I'm sure you can think of a few, that merely establish that the main character is an idiot that you should probably not take seriously. Even if the story is explicitly about the character's transformation from that to a serious badass, neither fans nor the author can complain if it doesn't sell well. Because then, people who only care about the characters more than anything else in the story have reason to continue, as if they like watching idiots and or grow. The point, however, of this comparison isn't to say that an introductory or main character needs positive traits to draw readers in. Depending on the audience and purpose of the story, plot and themes can be more important than following innately likable or relatable characters. A character like Yonagi Kei is an acquired taste. Some like me will like her immediately. Others will find her difficult to care about due to how seemingly strange she is. What can be said for certain, however, is that she's both extremely interesting and the perfect character for this story and its themes. The first thing established about Yonagi is that acting is her life. The extent of what that means and its implications for the story are subtle, and so that I may cover it all, I'm gonna have to talk about the shonen aesthetic. A quick refresher since the video is still in the works, it's coming soon guys, I promise. The shonen aesthetic can be described as what makes shonen, shonen, outside of its demographics. The 5 core aspects are the tendency and predisposition towards optimism, passing of the torch, teaching empathy, the belief in increasing power, and a pure heart. Now, some occupations are inherently more shonen than others. This is not to say that a person is limited in just how shonen they can be, just that certain paths in lives lend themselves more to the aesthetic than others, when the ideals of the occupation are more in line with shonen's core principles. In the past, actors were looked down on as little more than prostitutes. They certainly wouldn't even have the chance to make millions they could now, but realistically, their job is still just as precarious and looked down on. It's just in this age of mass everything, they can make up for it if they become one of the elites who make their way to the top. This is all to say that with the invention of recording devices and vast audiences, acting has evolved to become a very shonen occupation. You need optimism, gratitude to past actors, and the people who got you there despite the odds. You literally need to teach people and invoke empathy in the audience. You come to understand the nature of power politics, as well as your newfound ability to empower millions. And assuming you aren't a hack actor who got there through nepotism, you would need a pure heart, and the ability to forge this singular path. Given Yonagi's extreme dedication to acting, one can also consider her an extremely shonen protagonist, in the same vein as Naruto or Luffy in her own unique way. In fact, the only thing that makes her question her dream is her promise to take care of her family, which is also in line with the aesthetic. And speaking of her extreme dedication to acting, her method acting antics, and how she's referred to as a genuine article, is very reminiscent of the Buddhist aesthetic of art creation as well. Roger Davis in the book Japanese Culture, The Religious and Philosophical Foundations, notes this about the Buddhist doctrine. As a religious belief system, it discourages both philosophical theorizing and metaphysical speculation. Truth lies beyond rational analysis and can be only understood by someone who has walked on the path and reported what he has seen, i.e. a Buddha. As a result, the Buddhist tradition of artistic creation can be said to be focusing on the emptying out of unnecessary thoughts that come from an outside culture or otherwise overcomplicate the process. And instead, the emphasis is placed on expressing what comes to you right away in the present moment without hesitation. The first piece of information we get from an actual character in this series is their mocking of the fakeness of some actors in front of them. Kuroyama calls them robot-like, merely acting out what they think is expected of them. This is immediately contrasted by Yonagi, who truly invokes sadness through her method acting. While method acting isn't explicitly Buddhist in origin, it nonetheless reflects the same mindset of truth, only being understood by those who have walked the path, and only being expressible by those who report what they have seen. I think most can relate to seeing sadness in media and thinking at some point, yeah, this is really artificial, especially if you've ever been really sad in recent memory. Depending on your emotional intelligence, you can kind of see it in others even if they try to hide it from you. The way ActAge taps into that sentiment with not just tips for how actors get picked, but also showing what someone who's genuinely sad most likely would look like, and only possible because it has the perfect main character for its story in Yonagi Kei. It's good enough that we have a caring, lovable, and funny female main character in a Jump manga, which historically has been rare, though that has been changing with newer Jump titles like The Promised Neverland. But we also get additional greatness to admire in a main character who through her abnormality calls into question the unshonen, robot nature of the rest of society. Rules of the Trade. In his seminal work, Shonen Jump Rules, Digibro explains that you can expect any good Shonen Jump manga to be filled with lots of weird, strange rules which define the story. Each arc, and typically the story as a whole, will have an authority figure, detailing at length the rules of the scenario to the characters and or the audience. Whether it is a narrator or in-universe character, shonen manga is often defined by these rules. As they're explained and enacted, dramatic stakes are created, and we the audience can get further invested in the plot and characters' plights. As long as the rules are understood, even children can grasp the winners and the losers. This is why the best of the best, the true masterpieces, not only explore the rules as far as possible, but explain to them in the audience in a way that's natural and seamless with the plot. Such is the case with the inner thoughts of the director in ActAge. Of course he'd be thinking about what disqualifies an actor when he's part of the people in charge of the auditions. And through him, we understand the basics of what an actor should do, even if we've never looked into it before. Things like having your face match your body or not covering your face unnecessarily may seem obvious once you have them explained to you, but don't actually come naturally. It's established in the first chapter that an actor being caused unhappiness in life due to acting will be considered a failed state in this series. Knowing this provides us the perfect format for examining reasons why an actor chooses their path, whether it's thrills some can only find in that world, remembering themselves and finding their focus, the connection between the director's vision and an actor as a vessel, or just appeasing fans and family. There are many ways people achieve happiness through acting. All these things are demonstrated via Unagi's audition, yet she is still rejected. However, the director decides to work with her to prove the validity of their mindset to the world. Watching these two new partners in crime take on the establishment of the acting world is a rebellion rife with the potential to demonstrate some game-breaking rule bending, the type of stuff Shonen Jump was made for. ActAge sprouts a very similar message to my favorite video game of all time, Persona 5. If you want to change the world, all you have to do is look at it differently. Where Persona 5 applies this societally, this first chapter of ActAge goes personal and says reality, our perception of it, isn't fixed. Isn't that strangely awesome? It's a message that I can get behind because I agree. Life is epic. The treachery of images is also an opportunity. One need only reset their emotions and remember things again. I think what draws me to the series most is its pure-heartedness. Even if you can't relate to the financial struggles of the main character, even if the art style isn't your thing, even if the idea of following a manga about acting doesn't appeal to you at all, most of us can relate to ideas of the best ways to express ourselves, or struggling to choose between responsibility and our heart's desire. And many are blessed with people they want to protect in their own way. Acting today has changed a lot from how it was in the past, but it's also in a sense more of the same. We still have scandals, tragedies, and outrages, now at a wider scale. We also live in an age where acting means you can bring smiles to sick children more than ever before, run charities more than ever before, and inspire more than ever before. Today, it is technically possible for anyone to pick up a camera and become a star. But even more apparent to me is the interconnectedness of us all. No man is an island, and art is fundamentally a team effort, helping people see the truth and find liberation for themselves. That's what it means to live in this act age. Well, apparently according to Tazelad, it's pronounced act-age, like in montage, but we'll go with that line anyways, that's a good closer. So yeah, if you want more ActAge content, Tazelad also made a video that you should check out. But make sure you subscribe to this channel. I'm actually recording this part after I did some editing, and let me tell you, I had to learn everything from scratch on how to edit manga, and it's way more work intensive than anything else. Thanks to Pause and Select he has a side channel with how to edit manga. Very useful resource. Our patrons are the people who make experimental videos like this possible, so I'll do something unusual and give them all a shout out. AMAC, Anime Watcher, Comrade Ines, Dizo, Raccoon JS, Praise the Sunny D, Menzo, WikiJipo, and Zolo PK Flash. You're all the best. Thank you all so much for your contributions. Hunter x Hunter 2011 Dick Writing Association, I'm sure is very grateful. He reminds me way too much of Unagi. So to close, follow your heart, make something, and express yourself. I'll see you soon with another video.